All right, hello and welcome today. Thank you for taking the time to participate in a quick little presentation I'm going to give about the role of LGBTI allies in the workplace. My name is Jack Metcalf and I am DPC's LGBTI trainer accredited through Pride University. Before anything else, I'd like to just acknowledge that today we are meeting on the land of the Kulin Nations and pay my respects to their elders past and present and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people here today. And I'd also like to acknowledge my own elders of the LGBTI community, without whom we wouldn't be able to do things like this. Just in terms of what we're going to be covering today, I'm going to quickly run over what is an ally and what motivates people to become allies, what makes a good ally, and what good allies should do in the workplace. You've all attended already the LGBTI 101, so I know that you're up on at least some of the challenges that LGBTI people face and the basic terminology. But moving on from there, I'll just remind you all of what an ally is. So the Human Rights Campaign defines an ally as a term used to describe someone who is supportive of LGBTI people. It encompasses non-LGBTI allies, as well as those within the LGBTI community who support each other. So just to clarify that, for instance, a lesbian can be an ally to somebody who is bisexual or trans. Myself, who is not intersex, I aim always to be an ally to intersex people. So it's not just for straight or cisgender people. Everybody has the opportunity to upskill, learn more, and be an ally to everyone else in the LGBTI community. So why be an ally? When people are asked what motivates them to be allies, some of the core reasons that they identify are believing in social justice, inclusion, and human rights at a core base, showing support for their LGBTI colleagues, family, and friends, gaining a better understanding of LGBTI people and the challenges they face, meeting new people and making friends. Quite frankly, we're a great community. You'd be worse off without us. And being a member of LGBTI communities and wanting to be a better ally, as identified, where we can be allies to each other, but it's also important to note that many people may not be out in the workplace, and if there's a thriving ally community, it allows them to participate in LGBTI inclusion without necessarily outing themselves. So by being allies, you're creating an environment where people can or maybe prefer not to out themselves. Now, so what makes a good ally? To be a good ally, you really do need to have a good understanding of what the terminology is and understanding of the challenges that people face. You've already covered that a little bit in the 101, but you will also cover further on in the session today, in the workshop session, a bit more about the understanding of why it's important in the workplace and the business case for LGBTI inclusion. And you do need to be willing to play a role in changing culture and have a strong sense of self, because you're going to need to be able to speak up and to combat everyday homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, and discrimination against intersex variations as they come up. So you're going to need to feel empowered to actually do and say things when you see it, and that might also occur occasionally when it is coming from people in a higher position of power. So strong sense of self is something that we really need from you. And you're also going to need to have a good understanding of confidentiality. If somebody's come to you in trust and confidence to let you know something about themselves, do be mindful that they may not want anybody else to know that information. Before anything else, we want you to know that there is support available for you. You don't have to know everything to be a good ally. We don't expect you to understand everything. So if you do need additional support, we're here to help you. We've got a wonderful LGBTI network here in DPC. There's also the whole of government Victorian Public Sector Pride network that you can seek assistance from. You can always come and ask questions of me. I'm always more than willing to help workshop any issues you might be having or point you in the direction of additional resources or who to contact. And People and Culture are actually also a really helpful resource because they're the ones who are helping to drive the LGBTI inclusion initiatives here in DPC. So if you do not feel at the time that you're able to call out poor behaviour or say something, but you know that it was wrong and you want to know how to proceed, do feel like you can come talk to us. We can workshop what to do next and potentially assist you in moving forwards. Alrighty. Now, so you've decided that to be an ally, you've come along today, and the big question is, what do you actually do as an ally? The biggest things that you can do as an ally is to be visible, be outspoken, and to provide signs of hope and positive cues to people in the workplace. Remember that you might know people who are out, but you probably don't know everyone in your workplace or in your team who is a member of the LGBTI community. They may want to come out, they may not want to come out, and that's entirely up to them. But by being visible, outspoken, and doing these wonderful positive cues that can be seen, you're actually creating an environment where people feel supported, even if they choose to never come out. So it's really important. That's the most powerful thing you can do. Things like everyone walking around with the rainbow lanyards is a really powerful positive cue. Having rainbow stickers of any kind on your laptops, I think mine's hiding out here. These are helpful things for people to look around in the workplace and know that if they chose to come out, they would be supported and protected. Always keep educating yourself. As we said, we don't expect you to know everything, but you can do things just like going on the internet. We often have lots of helpful guides up. There's the Inclusive Language Guide, which can be helpful in your work. And do things like keep abreast of what's happening in current events. Read the news articles. If you're aware of things that might be tumultuous in everyday life, be aware of how that might be impacting people in your colleagues and your teams and your family and friends. One of the hardest things as an ally is to be brave and to call out anti-LGBTI behaviour. It's often insidious, it's often in small ways that is really hard to combat, but if you can send a positive signal to the people around you that this sort of behaviour isn't tolerated, that is one of the most powerful things you can do to help shift culture and change in the workplace. If somebody makes an off-colour joke that's at the expense of LGBTI people, you don't necessarily have to get into the largest debate with them, but you can look them straight in the eye and say, that's not funny, that's not okay in the workplace. You can do things as well, like remind them of the fact that we've got the Victorian public sector values, which that's actually directly contravening, and we have a code of conduct and an inclusion policy when it comes to LGBTI staff in the workplace, so that that kind of behaviour is not in any way supported. Just shut it down wherever you can. And again, that will send a really positive signal to everyone around who had previously been feeling hurt by that. You can join the network. It's not just for LGBTI people, it is inclusive of our allies, and we strongly encourage allies and friends to come along. Not only does that mean that you can come along and learn more about our experiences, but again, as I mentioned earlier, it facilitates an environment wherein people who are not out feel like they can come along as an ally and as a friend, and they can participate and suss out whether or not this would potentially be a safe space for them. Don't forget that you're not just here as an ally to LGBTI people, you're here as an ally to the friends and families of LGBTI people. There are going to be plenty of people who feel like they don't know much, or that they don't know what to say, or they worry about saying the wrong thing to their LGBTI family member or friend. You can be a really important resource. You can educate others and advocate on our behalf in places where people feel uncomfortable about speaking to us directly because they don't want to offend. They're not going to offend you, but you have a real important role to play in helping them in terms of understanding terminology, things to say and not to say, where to go for more information and things to consider. So you are a really important support to those people as well. And quite frankly, one of the largest things that you can do is wait. A lot of being an ally is just being visible and being there and saying that you're an ally. And a lot of the time you won't actually have to do anything until something goes wrong and you have to call out that behaviour and be brave. But a lot of the time you just need to wait. And if people want to come to you, they will, but they may choose not to. That doesn't mean that the workplace isn't inclusive or that there aren't LGBTI people here. You are still doing an incredible role just by being there and supporting workplace inclusion. Now, one of our lovely team members, Daniel Whithouse, who goes on the LGBTI Roadshow, has a lovely anecdote about everyday discrimination and acts of homophobia, which he describes as feeling like the death of 1,000 cuts. And it comes in the format of small acts, looks, aside comments, jokes, heteronormativity, which is the baseline assumption that everybody is heterosexual or cisgender and they want to be, that that's the norm. These assumptions can hurt people. When it comes to people assuming that your partner must be a woman or must be a man based on what they've assumed of you, or that because of the way you look, you are cisgender, and they're ignoring these parts of you, that can really hurt people. These everyday small instances of discrimination can really have an impact. So what Daniel says is that in response to the death of 1,000 cuts, you as allies are never going to be able to counteract every single one of those instances. But what you can do is be 1,000 smiles. So every small act that you do, every word of kindness, every time that you stand up for LGBTI rights, and every moment that you stand up in the workplace and advocate for LGBTI inclusion, you are sending strong and positive signals to the LGBTI staff there. You are helping through 1,000 small smiles and 1,000 small acts to help people feel loved and supported and welcomed and celebrated in their workplace. So please never underestimate the positive impact that you can have. We need you. LGBTI people can't do this entirely alone. It's often hard and exhausting. So you play a really important role for us to help us stand up and to advocate for us. So please do avail yourself of the support that we offer to allies. Please never stop being allies because you're so important. And if you have any questions, please know that we can help. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a manager that sometimes makes transphobic comments, and I'm not really sure what to do because I want to say something to him, but I'm also a little bit concerned because it's someone that I'm working to. Do you have any advice or things maybe that I can do? Because there is someone on our team that's trans, and I feel like when I don't want them to feel uncomfortable. I know that it's inappropriate.
Yeah, excellent question. In that circumstance, probably what I would do as a first port of call is speak to the trans person. See how they're coping, make sure that they're feeling supported, make sure that if they're not coping well, first and foremost that they know that we have an LGBTI supportive employee assistance program if they're feeling hurt. As a second port of call, obviously we need to deal with the instance of transphobia in the workplace. So I would work with them and what they want to do, whether they want to take it further. For one, they need to feel empowered in this process, but it obviously needs to stop. So if you don't feel confident in yourself speaking to the manager, you can always come speak to us in the network or to myself, and I can help workshop with you how you might proceed. My advice would be sitting down with the manager in a one-to-one and speaking with them and letting them know that those comments aren't okay for the reasons that I outlined earlier, because of a code of conduct, because of our public sector values, and because that it could and will impact people in the team. Obviously be careful not to out the person if they don't want to be out, but make sure that they understand that there are transparent people in DPC and that those comments will be incredibly hurtful and that they are not okay and that you have a serious problem with it, and then put the ball back in their court to see what they're going to do. I'm willing to bet that they'll probably react positively because it is a workplace issue. If they don't react positively, that's when you can start leveling it up. You can speak to somebody slightly higher than them or take it to people and culture, and we can start a process from there. I would be strongly recommending to that manager that they participate in the LGBTI 101, because not everybody who is homophobic, biphobic or transphobic is doing so because they necessarily hate the LGBTI community, but they don't understand. And it's an opportunity for us to step in and take this as a learning moment and see if we can bring someone else along on the journey and make sure that they understand what they can do.
In my workplace, LGBTI isn't really something that our colleagues are familiar with. How do I know if it's okay to ask questions of my LGBTI colleague? Is that allowed?
I'd say it is allowed. Make sure that you've got the kind of personal relationship where you can ask those questions. If they're a close colleague of yours and it would be something that would otherwise normally come up in everyday conversation, I would say that you can have those conversations. However, if you're not sure of your workplace environment, probably check in with them about how willing they are to be out and whether they want that in the workplace, so that you have an understanding of how confidential you need to be. But otherwise, I would strongly recommend that your team undertake LGBTI 101 training.
Great,
Thank you. Done. Thanks.